All right, one and all. Men, women, and children all over the world, and everybody listening. You are listening to the Troy Graham Ring 10 show. And just want to wish everybody a brand happy new year for you if I didn't before. Thank you for tuning in. And well, here we go. We have a panel today. We're going to be covering, as the cover says, CTE. Mental illness that very few people like to talk about. We don't like to discuss mental illness, like to sweep it under the rug for whatever reason. But tonight we're gonna give some information on it, basically, and we're gonna allow the fans to jump in here and ask some questions of these individuals. So sitting on the panel tonight, we have Matt Fiargo, founder of Ring 10. No, it doesn't sound good.
No, you got to work on that name. Not even close.
What's the, Go ahead, tell me the name.
Farrago. Farrago.
Two syllables.
Farrago. Okay.
Farrago.
Farrago.
Yeah, simple.
Farrago. Okay. Let's press the rewind button on that. Sitting with us today is Matt Farrago.
Friego.
Right?
Yeah, close.
Friego. Easy enough. And he's the founder of Ring 10. And he is very knowledgeable about CTE. And there's the echoes. Somebody has to go on mute for me because I keep hearing the echo. Yeah, can everybody go on mute, please?
Sure.
Okay, and then we have Rich the Cut Man Swartz, who has he is a cut man to one and all. I doubt that there's a fighter that he hasn't really put his hands on to stop the bleeding, patch an eye, or done something. And there is the world renowned Jermaine Thunder Robinson. She's the first woman to own her own gym, and she's also a trainer, and she's one of Baltimore's shining stars. I call her Auntie Thunder. You can call her you can call her Thunder Robinson. All right. So let's get started, Matt. We're going to discuss CTE tonight as the people trickle in. Why don't you give us a little history about number one, what CTE is, and then you could give us some history on your experience with CTE.
My experience with CTE. CTE, it was discovered with the football players. And I highly recommend it if anybody ever wants to watch a great movie. It's called Concussion with Will Smith as Dr. Bennett Amalu. I've met Dr. Amalu many times. And years ago, he opened up the brain of a football player that committed suicide. And he noticed the brain was infested with this matter that didn't look normal. He started to find other football players that had committed suicide, and he noticed the same problem with them. And then when he looked into it, he got into it and he named it chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which is chronic trauma causing swelling of the brain. And nowadays it's prevalent. Football players work very hard to minimize the CTE. They'll have less hit days, contact. If they do get buzzed, they're out. They're done for like a week, 2 weeks until they get medically cleared again. But boxers fight. It's a joke, but somebody says to me, "Well, Matt, how many fights have you had?" Now, I'll be honest with you. I've had 28 pro fights. I had 40, 50 amateur fights. But when they ask me that one question, Matt, how many fights have you had? I'd say maybe a fair estimate. I'd say about 2,000. What? 2,000 fights? Who has 2,000 fights? Every single day in the gym is a fight. Every single day sparring is a fight. There is no way anybody's going to take it easy on you when he's training for a fight himself. So that's a kind of my spin on how many fights you have. And that's important. Fortunately, I'm intelligent enough to carry it on and to understand the medical terminology about CTE, and hopefully we're going to change the sport somehow for the better.
Yeah, you had me at 2,000 fights. Now go ahead and tell them the effect that CTE had on you, Matt.
Well, I lost my job. I mean, this is the bad side of it. I lost my job, I lost my house, and I lost my family. So that's pretty much the effect of it. My memory is very short term. I'll forget we even had a conversation in a little while. Um, it's taking its toll, and you got to remember too. I have 2 college degrees. I was pre-med in college, so I'm not your standard typical prize fighter. I have 2 degrees, and I was pretty intelligent. My whole family's in medicine. What's happened to me is a reason, because I'm gonna have to. I'm here to fix the sport somehow. Somehow we're gonna work on this and get this thing better, safer.
Matt,
Yeah.
Matt, what are some of the warning signs that you could tell people? What are
Warning.
some of the warning signs you need to look out for?
With CTE, this is according to the medical staff. Loss of memory, loss of retention, irritability, violence, all of these things. I went through all of that. I never, ever, 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 never touched my family, never got physical with my wife or my kids or anybody. But I would punch a wall. I would break something. I'd slam something because I'm frustrated, and I didn't know how to relieve my frustration other than physical violence against something. And then, like I said, I lost my jobs. I couldn't keep up to what my job needed, so they let me go.
You know what, Matt? What you just described was me in my 20s. I was like that. I would lash out and hit walls, and I couldn't hardly keep a job. I was always bouncing or getting fired or something like that. And I had a tendency to just explode sometime.
Well, that was frustration, but for a different reason. Obviously, it was for a different reason. Was it, or was it because of boxing?
I used to box, yeah. And I remember one time I got hit so hard I could feel my brain shift. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, but you got to remember too, it's not a guy can get knocked out and he could fully recover. Um, CTE is what? Chronic, which means constant, constant trauma causing swelling. So it's not a one punch. Oh my gosh, I got hit in the head. You know, there was a guy that had one fight, one professional, two professional fights, and he says, "I got CTE. I need help." Really? I'm like, what planet are you from? So, you know, like I said, it's chronic. So it's long-term trauma causing swelling of the brain. And I'm donating my brain and my body, or the parts of my body, to the CTE clinic in, see, my memory's gone. I forgot where they are. Rich, where are they?
Uh, I'm not sure. Is it California?
No, no, no. It's Dr. Bennett Amalu. I think it's his association. But if something would have happened to me today, tomorrow, they would come automatically be notified. They'd come and harvest certain parts of my body for study. If that's the least I could do, then I have no problem with that.
I might
So,
add, Troy. I think Matt will tell you that there's no way to really specifically confirm if a fighter or a football player has CTE until after they do a an
autopsy.
autopsy on the brain tissue. They take some brain tissue and they put a dye on it, and they look for a protein that shows up when they apply the chemical. So there's no way of really knowing if a person has CTE until after they've passed away and they do an autopsy.
But that'll change, Rick. That'll change. They will come out with a way to
Right.
diagnose somebody with
And I think
CTE
the clinic
online.
is located in Florida. And Rich, I wanted you to step in here and talk about any fighters you might have dealt with that had CTE during your time as a cut man.
Well, I know quite a few former friends. I mean, quite a few friends of mine. Many of them former world champions. I'm not at liberty to mention who they are on publicly, without their permission or embarrassing them. But among many of my friends, I know for a fact that they do suffer from short-term memory loss. Many of them can't remember, without what they ate for breakfast, and I'm being quite serious about it. And I think we're beginning to find out more and more that in the case of boxing, that all, like Matt said, all of this can be traced all the ways back to the hard sparring that goes on in the gyms. I'm talking about the hard sparring that is permitted and allowed to take place in the gyms by many trainers that consider themselves to be very knowledgeable, and they've been training for many, many years. And I witnessed a video not too long ago that was sent to me on Facebook. A gym somewhere in New York City. I won't mention the gym, but these two fellas were sparring, and they were both wearing headgear. And the sparring session maybe lasted no more than 3 minutes. But one fella was unloading tremendous power punches, bombs, I call them, on his opponent's headgear. Now, we all know that headgear does not prevent you from getting concussions. It doesn't prevent injury to the brain. It's mainly worn to prevent cuts over the eyes. But this particular fella's trainer was just sitting there, standing in the corner of the ring very nonchalantly, as if nothing was taking place. And I mean, I was watching this video and I was totally outraged over what I saw. And I said to myself, how can this trainer allow this to go on in his gym, in the gym? I mean, this fellow was getting hit with tremendous shots to his headgear.
Rich,
And I'm saying to myself, what is he learning? I mean, to me, a sparring session is supposed to be a learning situation. It's supposed to be a teachable situation where you work on those things you don't do well, where the trainer stops the action, he makes a correction, and you move on. And I know Matt, I've spoken to Matt about this in the past, and Matt and I disagree a little bit. And he says, well, in sparring session, a fighter's got to show what he's got. He's preparing himself for actual battle. But this is where the CTE, the progressive degenerative condition to the brain, which results from repetitive hits to the head. Okay. And a lot of this does not show up until years after the person has retired and hung up his gloves. And when he needs medical insurance the most, that's when it's not there. And he has no safety net. And the powers that be don't seem to think it's important. Okay. His career is over. He's now a greyhound dog that is sent out to pasture, and there's nobody there to help him. I work corners, and I've got these fans sitting behind me. They're paying $40 for a ticket, and they're screaming. They want to see a knockout. They want to see this fighter get knocked unconscious, all for the price of $40. But they're not around there for him when he's sitting in a wheelchair and he can't remember what he had for breakfast, and he's wiping cream spinach off his chin, and they're not reaching in their pocket for a $10 bill to help that ex-fighter. Do they feel that they have to?
that's right.
They're just there for the entertainment. And thank you for that, Matt. There I go.
Rich.
Rich, that was very informative, man. It was very informative. And I definitely agree with everything you said. Thunder, you were you're a trainer and a gym
Well,
owner as well. So you want to step
yes,
in here
yes, I do
and give
because
your thoughts.
yes.
You
Well, let
got
me give
some
you my
feedback there, Troy. Some feedback.
I tell you what, Matt and Rich, go on mute while she's on while she's talking. Go on
Okay.
mute.
Well, let me and I hope they be able to comment. But I can say that being the first woman-owned boxing gym here in Maryland, I had a lot of old comers coming into my gym. And as always, I love that knowledge that they bring. But one of the things that I seen as they were coming in, see with CTE, the thing is that unlike a bullet wound is the best way I can explain it. A bullet wound, you can see where the bullet went in and the blood is gushing out. With trauma to the brain, you don't see where the hit went in and the blood is coming out. And because it's an invisible bleed, people tend not to understand, that there's a trauma going on, and because they don't see the bleed. And whereas with a gunshot, they can see it. So the CTE being, and it's a mental thing that the person goes through. They're not able to see it. The family can see it over time because you start to see the changes that's taking place within that family member with little things, like you said, the memory. The forgetfulness is part of it. Then they have the stutter in the voice. It's not much, but you hear, you start to hear the little stutter that starts to take place, where eventually, a lot of times, if it's to that part of the brain that gets worsened, and then the shakes, where they go to shake your hand and you got a little tremor there. These are all part of CTE that people really don't see. But I'm looking at the older guys that's coming into my gym, to help me, to try to teach me how to work my gym so that I can have a good gym. And I'm looking at them. That's where my first quest began, with trying to have insurance for these men. And I'm looking at them, and I'm looking at things that are failing, and I'm saying, I know people don't see this bleed that's taking place, but it's there. It's just the invisible bleed of trauma that's going on in their brain. I watched a fight yesterday. I think it was on Showtime with Romano, and he wore his component out. And I'm looking at how many hits, and I brag about boxing. That boxing is the one game, the one field that I know have so many protections along the line. But like you said, like Rich was saying, he seen this guy, it should have been stopped the fight. And I'm looking at this fresh fight, these young guys, 23 years old, and I mean, he blood was everywhere. And I'm trying to figure out, well, where is somebody going to throw in the towel? When is somebody going to stop this fight? The man had so many hits to his head, over 57 hits. I'm saying somebody need to stop this. And the guy still didn't fall out. But 57 hits that I counted. And this
They,
man was still standing. But I'm
they
thinking of him down the line.
they should take his
But
away. Review his license and take it away. There's no
wow.
there's no pride in taking a punch. In the old days, oh, this guy's a tough guy. He could take a punch. Well, that guy is brain damaged now, and he's walking on his heel. So
Yeah.
there's no pride in saying I could take a punch. I would rather
You
say
gotta go on mute for me, Thunder, because there's feedback when both of y'all are at the same time.
what's that? I'm sorry,
I lowered my volume, Troy.
Troy.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I was on mute. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah. I was gonna say in the old days in the gyms, there was always guys that you used them as a punching bag because they could take a punch. Remember? Oh man, don't worry. Yeah. Bring him in there. He could take a punch. Really go at him. Really get a good work out of him. Well, we didn't know about it, but that guy, I guarantee, is seriously brain damaged for the rest of his life. And any
I
fighter
agree.
that could take a punch is not respected because he's gonna end up with real serious damage before he's done. So, the old times have changed, and nowadays, listen, I don't know where the sport is gonna go. I don't know. I don't know if it should continue, unless we could find some kind of a way to stop the CTE in the brain. And if not, if we cannot, I don't know if I could stand there and promote a young kid to become a fighter because I know what's going to happen to him. How do you do that? How do you know? How do you say, good job, keep going, you'll get better, as he's taking massive punches to his brain? And you know what's going to happen. He's going to suffer for the rest of his life. How do you promote that? I don't know.
Well, Showtime was promoting it, and I'm trying to tell you, it was really sad because because I've had these discussions with both of y'all, with Rich and Matt, because of y'all enlightenment even more than what I have just seen personally. This man, like you said, I never thought about his license being revoked, but maybe that's where we got to get to because. I
Yeah.
mean, 57 hits, and I mean, he was bloody red, still standing. They hugging each other at the end. But like you said, this man is already walking on tiptoes, And if you think about it, just a couple of months ago, we just had a football player that shot up that family, never knew the family.
Yep.
And then he left his brain to science because he knew something was wrong with him from CTE and couldn't get no help. Like I said, it's invisible blood bleed that nobody is trying to recognize. And trauma is really is being I mean, I don't want to say that they're overlooking it, but they're not looking at it at all. But trauma takes place with these boxers and people not seeing it because it is a mental trauma, not a trauma of a gunshot, but it's an invisible bleed that people are not seeing. And it's just sad that we have to think about I mean, it breaks my heart that you said you wouldn't even want to promote another fighter where people, some of them are just born to fight, but nobody's born to take no kind of punishment and that type of hit.
Yeah. Dory?
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, Matt, you said you were in the medical field, and I believe you have family members that's in the medical field, and you design and they designed a hat or something that helps with CTE.
Yeah, the cryo helmet. My younger brother is a doctor, and he invented, because he saw what went on with me. He invented the cryo helmet, and every single fighter, every football player, all football players have it, but every single fighter should have one. Because if you think about it, when you hurt your elbow, when you hurt your knee or your leg, and it starts, well, what do? You put ice on it, right? You grab ice, you put it in a bag, you put it on your knee. Okay, you want to minimize the amount of bleeding. So you now did 10 rounds in the ring. You got hit 500, let's say 100 times in the brain. You have micro bleeds in your brain that you don't see, you don't feel, but they're there. So he invented a helmet that is nice and cushiony, but it's cold. So it minimizes the damage. Long term, theoretically, it should reduce the amount of trauma that happens to that individual. My brother invented that knowing that I was a fighter, except he invented it after my career was over. But that's so I never got a chance to use it on a regular basis.
Now,
And
now,
I have one. Matt gave me a helmet a couple of years back, and let me tell you, Troy, you talk to fighters. Most fighters have never heard about it. Most trainers have never seen it. It's made out of a black soft nylon. It looks like a fighter pilot's helmet from World War II, but it's, instead of made out of leather, it's made out of nylon. It's adjustable, uh, and inside of the helmet are about 12 different ice bags that attach to the inside the helmet by Velcro, and they don't contain water, but they contain that blue liquid. You put it in the freezer. It freezes up all the bags, and it has a insulated bag that you could put it in to take it to the gym, and you could put it on while you spar. After you're sparring, you could wear it in the dressing room after a pro bout. And as Matt said, listen, I taught physical education, health education for 33 years. I taught first aid, and everybody knows that you bang a leg, you injure an elbow or a shoulder, the first thing you apply is ice. Ice relieves pain, it relieves inflammation, and it slows down the flow of blood to the area. And if you're going to ice your fist, what's more important than icing your brain after taking 75, 100, 150 hits to the head?
Wow. Okay. Okay. Now, Matt, where can you purchase this? And is it available for boxers right now, or is it not available?
Oh yeah. If you just put on Cryo Helmet, if you search it, you'll see everybody that sells it. It's all over the internet.
I think the cost is about $89, but it certainly would be more beneficial to a fighter than having 5 different colored shorts or jackets or warm-up hoodies walking into the ring. If he gets that cryo helmet, he could use it. In fact, I'm even thinking of using it in between rounds and putting it on the fighter's head to cool his head down during the actual 1 minute of rest on the stool. I don't see any reason why I couldn't use it in lieu of an ice bag.
Absolutely. Well, what do they normally do? Is they grab ice, shove it on the side of his head, and they think they're doing good with it, right? Isn't that traditional way? Or they shove it on the back of his neck. I don't know the logic of that. I really don't. It baffles me. But that's because the old days they did that. So the train is still following in the same footsteps.
Okay, and Thunder, have you heard about this before?
Well,
before Matt mentioned it?
This is the first time I've ever heard of that type of helmet, and I'm certainly going to look it up, and I'm certainly would have it in my gym. Just like you said, that would be better. The reason for the ice is for the swelling. That's why they put it on the back of their head at the Maduro. They doing it as so that they could keep the swelling from going to the brain. So that's the reason for the ice. So that would be even better to have a helmet that's been for those particular areas. That would be fantastic. I think everyone should have it. But like I said, this is the first time I've ever heard of it.
It's been around a long time. I've been talking it up for years. People don't realize this, but like I said, when you hurt your elbow, you put ice on it. So every day you're hurting your head. You're doing. I don't care how good you are. You're taking punches to the head, even though they're small. They add up. So by putting this on while you do your calisthenics and your jumping rope, you could wear it. It's not like a helmet that's got to be connected to the wall. It's a light helmet that just goes on your head and it cools your brain down. It slows the micro bleedings of your brain. It's really, football players adapted. They all the time you see them on the sidelines wearing them because they know.
Well, the CTE was brought to the attention of the world stage by the professional football players. Professional football players receive a lot of injuries. They develop CTE. Hockey players, only recently do we hear it in boxing, but yet the amateur fighters and professional fighters. I mean, how do you make boxing safe when you're competing against someone and you're trying to hit that person in the head? You're trying to land punches to his body. How can you possibly make that sport any safer? I mean, if you have a child that's 9 or 10 years old, there are so many sports that you can get them involved in. Do you want to get them involved in the sport where the objective is to try to hurt and do damage to your opponent? I don't know. I mean, there are so many other sports out there that are beneficial. I mean, I love the sport of boxing, but how could you make it safer than it is? Do you come up with a rule and say no longer are we allowed to punches to the head or to the face? I don't think we're going to see that happen. And I don't think we're going to see professional boxing or amateur boxing done away with. We have to try to make it as safe as we possibly can.
Right. And that would be a step in the right cryo helmet.
Right, right. But you know what they say about knowledge, right? It's only powerful when you know how to use it. And based on everything I'm learning today, I think it's going to be is in the future. Someone's going to hear all this and get very interested and put all this knowledge to good use and find a way, to improve the sport. I really feel that way because I didn't know anything about the hat until you mentioned it in a previous show, and and like the warning signs for CTE. I've seen that most of my life. Take me out the equation, but I've seen that most of my life with different fighters and different gyms. Never paid attention to it. I just thought they were just, had bad tempers or whatever the case may be,
Yeah.
right? So I never knew that it was a real problem. But if we could catch something early, then we could find a way to actually help. I don't know. Can you cure brain damage, Matt? I mean, can you?
Well, you're calling it brain damage. I don't like to call it brain damage. I like to call it CTE, what it is. Yeah, there's it's called hyperbarics, hyperbaric chambers. So you're literally rolled into a tube, and it drops the pressure down to 20 feet below water. And what that does is it forces oxygen into your brain cells that normally will not absorb oxygen because it's been damaged. But this forces it in. I went through two or maybe three sessions of it. And listen, I can't tell myself, but I've had people say to me multiple times, "Wow, man, you seem a lot more with it, more on cue." I said, "Really? I never noticed." And I'm assuming that's what it is because there's really nothing else I'm doing differently other than those hyperbaric chambers. Now, they're very expensive, very expensive. They used me as a test dummy because I was the only fighter that they knew of, so it was comp to me. Um, it's very expensive. So could a normal person afford it? Probably not. Probably not. And medical insurance is not going to cover it because that's medical insurance. You know them. So
It's experimental. They're not going to cover that.
experimental, even when it becomes better than experimental, they still might not cover it. But ideally, that would be the way to go. Eventually, the cost will come down, and hopefully, guys will get treated much better. But that seems to be the only way to somehow slow it down or even reverse it.
Yeah, because
Well, I mean,
Matt, but
Okay, go
Matt,
ahead. Go ahead.
according to all the evidence that's out there today, CTE, it's considered irreversible and not curable, and it only progressively gets worse with time.
Well, that okay. You know
Right
what?
now, they're saying that.
That's a good statement, except for the fact that life changes and things move on. And they said that about polio. My gosh, if you get polio, you're done. It's over. You're done. Well, we invented the new cure for it. We right, and polio eliminated. So nothing is there is no it's over. It's over. Nobody gives up 100%. And right now the hyperbarics is a major way of treating it, slowing it down, and possibly reversing it. Why not give it a chance? And if not, there'll be something else.
well, I mean, I believe that that's all. It's always a way. And my degree is in psychology, so I believe that with trauma, because and with the behavior, that there's always a way. If we know that that person is suffering with CTE, that we can train him to be able to deal with, his the anger issue that he had, or the different outbursts and loss of memory. There are ways to teach them how to cope. That's when once he know that he had it and diagnosed, we can always send him to get help because this is a trauma that when they have no support And right now they have no support because nobody's recognizing it. But and because it's a slow pace. But once you recognize what it is and you get the help that you need, a psychologist, a psychiatrist will be able to help with the different things that you're going through with either behavior changes or medication. There's always something. There is hope when you have this. You found hope, through the chambers. And if there's someone that's not at that point, there's other ways that they can go through figuring it out. Like I said, it's an invisible bleed. It's red blood pouring down from the brain, but there's a way to stop it. So that means that's medicine. That means there's behavior changes. There's all kinds of ways that we can alter the end result so that it won't be a violent end.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. In time, anything could be cured. Like you were saying, Matt, back in the day, polio was considered like a death. Like that was a death. Once you got polio, you were going to die. But now things have changed. I just think we don't have the knowledge and maybe the science yet to deal with it. But in the future, we don't know what could happen. And I wanted to just find out some more information on the thing, man, and how to get it out there some more. Because as far as I know, I'm the only podcaster that's really covering this. Everybody claims to love the sport. They love the sport, but they cover the nonsense and none of the stuff like this because it really doesn't draw in the audience that much. I look at it totally different. I look at it like this: you plant a seed, eventually it'll grow and bear fruit, which is what we're doing over here, right?
Yeah.
We're planting seeds and growing fruit. I'm not so much into the fast food where you attract a bunch of people, then you got to keep doing that. It's about growing seeds and growing a foundation so you have something meaningful, which is what this is. But wow. You know what's so funny? I called my auntie today. My auntie is a doctor or she's a head nurse of a hospital, and she didn't even know about CTE. So I was gonna
Really?
get her to come on the show, and she didn't know. Yeah, she didn't know about it, and
How
I
could
was
that be?
I was
Really?
surprised at that. I don't know. I don't know. But she's very knowledgeable because she's the one that
Yeah.
always helps me out with my issue. Yeah.
But
Well,
Matt,
that's
let me
what
ask you. I mean, Matt, you're a lot more knowledgeable than I am. But back in the day, back in the 30s and 40s, when you saw an ex-fighter, like you say, walking on his heels, people would refer and say, "Well, he's punch drunk.
he's punching.
He's punch drunk."
Yeah.
Which was a kind of a derogatory comment used to describe an ex-fighter. He's punch drunk. Then the terminology switched to pugilistic dementia. He's suffering from pugilistic dementia. Now it's CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy. Is it all one and the same? Is it the same as Alzheimer's? Is it in any way connected to what Muhammad Ali suffered from? I mean, he suffered from Parkinson's.
Correct.
And Ali, many people felt Muhammad Ali should have retired after he had that fight with Ernie Shavers, but he continued to fight. In fact, Dr. Ferdy Pacheco split with Angelo Dundee because he noticed that Ali was beginning to show the signs of Parkinson's before he even fought Trevor Berbick, before he fought Larry Holmes. Is it similar? Is it different? Is it the same? Or are we talking about different degenerative diseases?
We're talking about stages. That's all that is. It's just stages in the process. It's the stage of it. And that's what fear, I think the fear is with it being in boxing. Because, as Matt was saying, he would want to eliminate the sport. But, just as, like I said, the fighter that I looked at in that ring being hit 57 times and that didn't go down. Something has to change. And as we become more aware of that invisible bleed with CTE, a lot of things must change. But as you say, it begins with knowledge. People don't want to acknowledge when it comes to boxing because they believe this is what they do. They're supposed to get hit upside their head.
Now,
and I paid him to do it. I paid him to get hit in the head, And they
That's
did.
right. I came in there to see this fight. Like you said, paid $40. I want to see somebody get knocked down. And
That's
see,
right.
but at the same time, you want to see somebody get knocked down. You're not paying for the long-term effect of that
No.
fighter. That's why we have to get things together and show what the process been taking place with CTE. We need to make
Thunder,
those steps.
you're talking about the fight you saw where the fighter got hit 57 times in the head, correct?
Yes, it scared me to death. And that was on Showtime just the other day.
All right. Well, I'm sure you must have remembered the fight between Magomed Abdusalamov and
Perez. Perez.
I'm trying to think. I think it was Ruiz,
Perez.
Mike Ruiz, and Magomed Abdusalamov. That fight went to the very end. And if you looked at the CompuBox score at the end of that fight, Magomed Abdusalamov received 315 hits to the head.
Wow. You see, all that just brings, uh, because I'm a lover of the sport, but I realize the end results if we don't change something. Knowing how many hits that young man, these men are taking, men and women, because women are in this sport as well. I mean, it's just I fight away my tears and my emotions because, as a psychologist, I know what I see, what's going to take place. As a nurse, I also see the physical part of it and the mental part. So I mean, I'm looking, but keep in mind, I still love this sport, but I don't want to see anybody injured to the point where they can't remember their name, can't write their name, can't see out their eyes because of the so many traumas and hits to the head. I don't want to see that.
It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. I don't know how
And
to
I
make the
also,
sport safer. I don't know. I don't. The only way to do it would be you can only hit below the neck, underneath the
no,
body,
no,
and then
Can't hit the
I
neck.
agree.
Can't hit the
And then
neck.
the sport's done. You're right.
no, but I think that in the gyms, Matt, Rich and Thunder, they should start teaching about CTE from the ground up, from the amateurs up. From the
Okay.
youngest ones up. They should explain to them what exactly is CTE and how it's caused. This way, everybody knows what to look out for at least. They look
So
out for
you're
the
gonna
warning
teach
signs.
these kids without even an education about CTE when he's got a chance to make
And
money as a professional fighter and he's going
okay,
to be champion of the
okay,
world because his
Matt,
friend told him that he's going to be champion of the world. You're going to tell him about
oh,
CTE and he's going to be like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't do it. Maybe I should take care of my health better.
no, no,
Really?
no, no. That's the same thing with football. The same thing with football too, Matt.
Yeah.
You
Yeah, you're
teach it
right.
from the ground up because Matt. Let me finish what I'm saying here, Matt.
Okay.
Because you know what, Matt, this is how you weed out those who really love it and those who are just maybe passing the time with it. Because I have a
Right.
simple statement that I say. I say, some will, some won't. So what? Once you learn about this, if you still want to say this is something I love and I'm going to chance it, then guess what? You are now you're armed with the knowledge of everything, and you decided to take this direction. You will take the precautions as a human being to say, okay, I know my limits. When I feel that I can't really go anymore, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna let that pride or whatever in me say, let me just take this one more hit because it could ruin me for the rest of my life, and then I can't make any money. I'm gonna live to fight another day. And maybe that football player will think before he throws his entire weight into somebody. And he'll say, okay, like this, still stop him. I don't have to crush him because now you're armed with knowledge.
Well,
I don't
Troy,
know. Listen, a professional fighter is going to be champion of the world. Everybody thinks that, and they don't look back. They don't want to. They don't want to care about brain damage. It's not going to happen to me, and I won't feel it for another 30 years. So right now, I'm going to be champion of the world because my trainer told me I'm going to be champion. Yeah, but your record is 2 wins and 6 losses. Yeah, but he says I'm getting better. I'm getting better and I'm gonna come around and I'm gonna be champion of the world. Why? Because that trainer needs him to make him money, and then when he doesn't anymore, he'll get rid of him. There you go. That makes sense.
And Troy, I can tell you from my own experience that Matt has received a lot of resistance from people who are in the sport of boxing because they don't want to hear this. They don't want to know about it. They don't want to talk about CTE. They don't want their fighters to know about CTE because they're in a sport of making world champions. And they don't want to talk about it. They want to suppress
I'm going to
it.
tell you. Okay, well, I'm going to tell you what I was always told. If there's one damn door that's slammed in your face, then you find a door that'll open. You can't keep knocking on the same door of the same person that's going to slam the door in your face. You have to find, if you have to go through 1,000 doors or 1,000 doors to get to that 10 that'll actually help you, guess what? This is your call. This is your journey. You do it. I'm not saying it's easy. I will never say that it's easy. I'm never even going to say I might even have that fortitude over time. But that's what you have to do. That's the purpose. That's the call. You go through, you keep going until you find the door that'll open. Because there's somebody out there that wants to help. There's somebody out there that has something you need and is willing to help you. There's somebody out there that has money that wants to put it to a good cause. There's somebody out there that has some power that wants to put it to a good cause. But you know what? You stopped at door number 999 and turned around. And you didn't go to the the 1,000 door. And that person was like, I'm right here. But you were so beat down that you stopped. Let me tell you a quick story, and then I'm going to let everybody get back to this thing. There was a lady who swam from Manhattan to, what was it, Canada or something? I don't really remember the whole story, or something like that. She was swimming from Manhattan to Canada, I believe was the whole story. And she, or was it Canada to Manhattan? I might have the story backwards. Anyway, it started to rain. There was a storm, and she started getting attacked by jellyfish, and she was tired, and she was like, oh, and then it got foggy. She couldn't see in front of her. And at the last minute, she said, turn around. Guess what? As she was swimming back and the fog cleared, guess what she saw? The Statue of Liberty. She was right there. All she had to do was push on, and she would have gotten right there. So next year, the following year, she did the same thing. And she wanted to stop. And at the last minute, she said, I'm going to stop. Then she said, no. And she made that one extra push. And guess what? She actually made it to the island of Manhattan. That's what this is all about, man. If you know, all you could tell me is what can't be done, you talking to the wrong brother. I'm telling you that right now.
No, I'm with you. And I appreciate you giving us the venue to express it to people, and eventually we'll find the right connection that gets us over the hump. Because I think the sport has to be unionized. That's the most important thing. We've talked about this, but football is a union, baseball is a union, basketball is a union, hockey's a union, golf is a union, boxing's not a union. People don't even know. Well, you mean don't they get insurance? No. Don't they get coverage? No. Don't they get anything? No. You fight, you get paid. You don't fight, the door's right there. Don't call me and I won't call you. That's boxing. So that's
I got something else to tell you, Matt. I was listening to another show, which is this big show, has thousands and thousands and millions of fans, right? It's called, Drink Champs, and it's hosted by a rapper named Noriega, right?
Yeah.
And he echoed exactly everything you said. Something tells me he either listens to us or he has that passion in him, because guess what? Hip hop doesn't have a commission either. If you're not a big star, don't have a record out, you die and you don't have any money, guess what? You die alone. So he wants to form a commission and a union as well. And let me tell you, when I heard him speak, I'm like, does he know Matt? Because he said the same thing, word for word, that you just said. Yes. And if anybody's listening, you tell him I'm trying to reach out to him. Noriega. Okay. I'm trying to get in touch with him. He said it word for word. I don't know who took it from whom, but it was the same thing, letter for letter, word for word. Yeah.
But Troy, people will say, yeah, but it's not doable. They say people have been talking about this for the last 60, 70, 80 years. It's all nice to talk about, but it's not doable. And they'll tell you the reason why it's not doable is because a fighter is an individual contractor. He doesn't have a season. A baseball player has a season. Hockey, basketball, American football has a season. Golfers and tennis players, they're not unionized, but they do have an organization that represents them.
Right.
And the fighters, the professional fighters, should also have an organization that represents them, where they have due process, where they can get some kind of medical coverage, optical plan, dental plan, where they have a safety net, where they have guaranteed medical insurance after they hang up their gloves. You know, the fact setting up a pension plan, that may be a lot more difficult. I'm not a labor lawyer. I don't know if that's doable. If you want to get a pension, whether you're a fireman, a city, a police officer, or a school teacher, if you're going to
There's a
retire
lot of
33
feedback.
years
There's a lot
later,
of feedback.
you have to pay into that pension system, you know, if you want to collect it when you retire. But, you know, how do you set up a plan? A fighter who had 6 fights, what kind of pension is he going to get years later compared to somebody who made millions and millions of dollars and, you know, paid into a pension plan?
I
That may
definitely
not be
hear you,
doable.
but
We
I
don't
don't want
know.
to focus on that tonight. I definitely just want to stick to the CTE, but that's something we are going to get back to because you know that's what got us here tonight. But it's coming down to the last 7 minutes. So what I'd like to do is for everybody just to give their closing thoughts and tell everybody. Actually, if you have anything else to share about CTE, any more knowledge, I want to learn some more about the hats. Matt, if you could give some more information on the hats, where they can be purchased, is there a website, costs, all of that? I think that'll be great. And Rich, if you have anything else you want to share about CTE, please do. The same thing with you, that Thunder, and then we're gonna close it out, and everybody could tell the audience and everybody where they can be reached.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, I'd like to conclude just by emphasizing that I think, as I said earlier in the program, we know for a fact that the CTE can be traced right back to the beginning, and it has to do with the hard sparring and all the hits that these amateur fighters are taking to the head when they're sparring, when they're wearing a headgear. The headgear is not preventing, it is only worn to prevent over the eyes. I'd like to see these trainers try to avoid as much hard sparring as possible and use the sparring session as a teachable situation, a learning situation where you work on those things you don't do well, so that when you're under the bright lights, you can perform on a higher level. Okay, that's how I'd like to leave with that idea. Uh, you know, not to try to avoid as much hard sparring as possible in the gyms.
Okay. Also, Rich, you are a well-known cut man in the business. Do you have a website, email that people could reach you if they wanted to reach you?
Right, I'm on Facebook, Rich
Okay.
Schwartz. I'm on Facebook. You can find me there. My
Okay.
email address is rschwartz59 at AOL.com. That's rschwartz59 at AOL.com if you want to email me. And I'm on Facebook under Richard Schwartz.
Gotcha. Thank you very much, Matt. And now I'm going to do this one more time to get it right. We're going to go to Matt Farrago. Am I right?
Good enough. Close
Right?
enough.
All
Yep.
right. Now go ahead, Matt. Close it out. We're giving some more information about the hat, the CTE hat, and if you're on Facebook or have a website, go ahead and give that information as well.
Well, like I said, I don't mind promoting the helmet, Cryo Helmet, and I wish I had it when I was a fighter. It is my brother's equipment. It's his invention, and he sold it off to a company that's now selling it. But in theory, it's a phenomenal item to have, and I think every fighter I know, I would wear it every single day after sparring. It's called the Cryo Helmet with a CRYO helmet, and if you search it, you'll come up with multiple sites that sell it. But I think that's only one way that we're moving forward on minimizing the amount of trauma that a fighter has. And that and what Ring 10 is doing to help the organization and to help, like I said, I'm part of the hyperbarics. I'm part of testing. I've offered myself as a specimen to anybody that has a cure for CTE. If it works on me, it'll work on all fighters. And that's what I'm here for.
Careful with that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, because they said they're going to do a lobotomy on me. And I said, no, I already had that done.
Nah, I don't want that. All right, Miss Thunder Robinson, step on in here and give your closing remarks and your
What my
social
closing,
media information.
my closing remark would be that I think you're right. We have to introduce it in the beginning stages, which is when we start in the gym. And the way to do that is also through USA Boxing. We have our training that we have to go through every 6 months, to be certified into this area, and they always changing the rules and everything. One of the things we get introduced is awareness of CTE. And we can have the trainer and just know about that information. A crucial part. Now that I know of it, I will. That's what I'm going for the day. Is I'm saying none of my amateur boxers spar well, because knowledge is out. And I mean, it's just so important. Like I said, people don't recognize the mental part of the bleed unless they see in red blood, not the invisible blood that CTE has, is the invisible bleeding. We need to recognize it and know that in order to save our other fighters that's coming up, that we got to put protocols in place so that they can be aware of, because no one's going to turn down $1 million. They're going to want to fight, and we're going to pay to see that fighter. But at least if we have some guards in place as they go along, I think that'll be most important. Now, you can reach me at Uppercut Boxing Gym of Maryland at gmail.com. There you go.
Now, let me say my closing thoughts here. Thank you all for coming out, and thank everyone in the panel as well. But thank you all for coming out. You gave what's the most valuable thing you have in life, which is your time, and you gave some very valuable information. And I know it's going to affect somebody and help something to grow. So thank you. I appreciate each and every one of you for coming out tonight and you know helping out and giving your knowledge. And I will continue to do shows like this to pass on information. It's all fun to debate. It's all fun to just talk about current affairs, but in all reality, there's a darker side to boxing, which we never like to deal with. And I really want to give some information out to stop, to help with that, and just to pass on the knowledge so we'll know in the future and maybe be able to help the sport become a little safer.
Yeah.
So thank
Yes.
everyone. Thomas Jones, thank you. Lisa Bell, Major Keys, big up yourself. Smooth Cat, I saw you. Thank you, that guy. Phil Carl Roberts, thank you very much. And everyone else that might have left before I was able to thank them. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Everyone have a blessed night, and I will see you all not next week, the last Wednesday of this month.
Right.
Last Wednesday of this month. I'll see you all the one next, and we'll do another show which covers the commission and the union. And like I said, Noriega, if you're listening from Dream Champs, we want you, baby. We both on the same mindset. We want to start a union for both hip hop and boxing. We can help each other out. We can
Yeah.
help each other out, brother.
Thanks
Thank
for
you, and
having
God
us
bless.
on. Thanks for having us, Troy. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, thank you. Bless up and good night.
Good night, guys.
Are we frozen?
I think we're